So today we're going to try, and as I mentioned, we're going to go through quite a lot of content and we're going to try and answer these questions for you so that at the end of the webinar this morning, hopefully we will have answered all of these questions properly, helping you to understand why your business financial performance, what it is and why it matters, why you need to know it. Looking at your business plan, so how you're going to prepare your business to get through any situation and take control of that. And part of that is your systems and your processes and a few ideas along the way. We'll talk about a couple of things quickly and how we identify quick wins and how we get momentum. One of the big problems we see with a lot of businesses is the lack of implementation in those. And what we see all these great ideas, but they don't actually happen. So we're going to give you some tips on how to make sure those things happen and how you can make sure that they're effective so that once you've got those in place, you'll be ready for when challenges like the current situation occur. And I'll give you some examples as we go of how that's worked with business owners that we work with. So we're going to try and go through very quickly, looking a little bit. I'm not going to delve too much into financials because we can get bogged down on that, but I want to focus on some of the key things and the idea of business plans, which again, we can get bogged down on. So the keys that we want to come out with is how you can achieve some quick wins and really get some momentum for your business and understand where you're at now and how you can move forward. So we want to be able to create an action plan for you. So it is a crucial time for all businesses, and there's a lot more to it than just the current situation. And why is this crucial? We're going to look at why small businesses don't achieve what the business owner intends. When you start your business, what do you want from your business? A lot of businesses don't deliver on that. And we're going to look at some of the key reasons why. And when we look at that reason of why those businesses aren't successful, it comes down to why they're really struggling at the moment. So we're going to have a look at that in a bit more detail. One of my favorite quotes is from Dr. Stephen Covey, who you may be aware of. He's the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and a number of other well-known books as well. And he talks about that I'm not a product of my circumstances, I'm a product of my decisions. And this is quite important because we all have situations happening to us, but it's how we respond and how we make decisions about the things that we can control make a big difference to how we can move forward. We all have very similar situations, but the ones that have looked at this as opportunities are really growing. So we'll have a look at that, and just bear in mind that we are looking at this as an overview. We can drill down into it, but we need a lot more time than what we're going to have this morning. So one of the things we talk about that you'll hear a lot of businesses talk about is that they need to grow. And growth for a business is not just about making more money or selling more. Business is about creating a business that is profitable in the long term, but not just profitable in the long term, but it actually meets the needs of why you started your business. And often we go running the business and we lose touch with why we really started that business in the first place. And we end up doing a lot of things that we didn't intend to do, that don't fit with why we wanted to run the business, and a lot of activities that don't actually generate a profit. So we're looking at how do we create a long-term business that meets more than just creating extra revenue and extra profit. So to do that, we have to start with the question of why. Now, this has become quite a popular phrase recently in business terms, is asking, why does your business exist? So why did you go into business? And there's a lot of different reasons. And for some people, it is about profit. It is about making money. But for a lot of people, it's about control, having control over what you do, when you do it, who you do it for, and the times that you do it. So we go into business for a lot of different reasons, and that reason for going into business could be different for two different people running the same kind of business. So what's important to them is different. So that will affect how they run their businesses, because the outcomes that they're trying to achieve are very different. Your ideal business is going to look very different to somebody else's, we need to focus on what your ideal business is going to look like and how do we create that. There's no point comparing to somebody else if their goals are completely different to yours. We can use a lot of the same methods and a lot of the same actions, but the outcome is going to be different that we're trying to achieve. So where do we start? We have to start at a starting point, and we always say that we start where we're at the moment. So where are we at the moment? And that's where we need to look at things like our financial situation, our cash situation. So if you don't already have an accounting system in place, and some small business owners don't, so it's not an assumed statement that everybody has an accounting system that they're using. So it is quite common for business owners to use Xero or QuickBooks or MYB to run their financials. But what we find is that a lot of business owners aren't trained in accounting or bookkeeping, so they don't understand the outcomes of what those financial reports mean. They don't understand what the profit is. They don't understand the receivables. They don't understand what are overheads and what are direct costs of selling. So we need to look at what is in those financial statements and what does it tell you. The key thing to running business is not just the financial information. We need to look at a lot of non-financial information. And at the moment, one of the key things is how do we create more revenue for our business? And a lot of that information comes outside of our financial systems. So looking at our sales strategy, our marketing strategy, are we actually generating leads? Where are they coming from? And of all the leads that we're generating, how are we converting them to sales? So we look at those sorts of information, and that's where your website statistics and your marketing statistics and your customer relationship tracking comes into play. But we can also look at how efficiently we can process information. So how long does it take before you have a first contact with a customer before they actually buy with you? So how can we streamline that? How can we make sure that we get paid quickly? Once you've made the sale, you want to be paid for it. So if you're dealing with trade terms, then it could be 14 days or 28 days or a month or longer. So how do we make sure that we get paid quicker? How do we make it easier to pay? So looking at the efficiency of our systems and also looking at what risks there are for our business. So if we have a lot of our business tied up with one particular customer, there's a big risk that if something happens to that customer, then something is going to happen to our business. And there's quite a dramatic statistic really that I think it's over 60% of businesses have rely on one main customer. So one main customer provides 80% or more of their income. So very dependent on a key customer. So how do we look at our customers and spread the risk there? And also how do we make sure that we've got a regular stream of income coming in the future? A big part of our business as well is how our processes work and our employees. So a lot of business owners will say that they've gone into business to create a lifestyle, be the boss, but they end up doing all the work themselves. So they don't have an employee or they don't have employees, or they don't have employees that are equipped to do the jobs that the business owner wants them to do. The business owner often makes all the decisions, makes all is relied upon to do things. So not equipping the employees to actually do the job that you need them to do, or using systems to automate or eliminate some of those processes that end up coming back to the business owner. So understanding what's going on in our business is important. We need to know what's going on from a financial point of view, from a sales point of view, future sales, and what are the risks for our business. So we need to have a closer look at what's actually going on in our business. And that's the starting point that we need to go from. And it's very important to know your figures. Very important. And particularly at the moment where a lot of businesses are looking to refinance or to get, government funding. You need to have your figures up to date, and they need to be profitable, and they need to show where your future revenue is coming from. So we need to have those in place. So they are a key. And it's not just, though, the financial figures that we talked about. So we need to get a lot more different knowledge about our business. Because one of the things we discover is that when we start a business, we go in because we're good at a particular skill. We might be good at plumbing, or we might be good at sales, or we might be good at website design, or we might be able to build something. But as a business owner, you start to wear a lot of different hats. You're the salesperson, you're the inventory person, you're the accounts person, you're the bookkeeper, you're the purchasing officer, the warehouse, the occupational health and safety person. You're all of these different responsibilities, and they all have a role to play in your business. So how are they working in your business, and are they creating risks for you, or are they being managed? And if you're doing all of those things as the business owner, you don't actually have the time to work on your business. You don't have time on this strategic aspect of the business where you're working out where the business is going to go in the future and how you're going to make sure you get there, how you're going to protect your business against risk, like future risk. So we have situations at the moment where a lot of businesses have lost sources of revenue because of COVID and lockdown and market conditions. And prior to that, we had droughts, we had bushfires, all affecting businesses. So without a plan on how they're going to manage those risks and manage that future revenue, a lot of businesses are struggling. So you need to be able to free up time to think about those strategic things, about where are you going to get business from? How are you going to diversify where your business comes from? Are you relying on selling one particular product? Can we change to have multiple products or different kinds of markets? So a lot of people in the tourism industry at the moment have had to they've been struggling because of lockdown particularly, but I know that one tourism operator who did tours in the CBD, which was a terrible place to be doing any kind of business in the recent months, has moved to doing online tours and creating future opportunities by showing what the tours that they operate normally show, and they've created a lot of future demand for their business. So they've had to work on different ways of selling product. There's another business owner that supplied stages and custom stages to events for conferences and showcases and trade shows. So they moved into the business of creating desks for people working from home. So a different market, but using the skills they already had, the skills that their employees already had, and something very familiar, but different to their main source of income. So being able to plan, have the processes in place where you are adaptable, but also looking at how can you make sure that if something happens to one part of your business, it doesn't affect all of your business moving forward. So I mentioned earlier that the business that we have now often doesn't match what we started with or our hopes for our business when we started. And that's because we end up doing a lot of these things that we didn't think that we needed to do when we started our business. We didn't realize we had to do the accounting. We didn't realize we had to do health and safety. We didn't realize we had to manage employees, that we had issues with customers. We just wanted to produce. So a lot of those things happen. So we end up with a business that's very different to what we wanted when we started. So how do we get from our ideal business, how do we get from the business we have now to the ideal business that we're trying to create? So what do we need to do to get there? So the first thing we looked at was actually identifying where we're at. So that's a good place to start, because we need to know where we're moving from to be able to move forward. So if we know where we're at and where we want to go to, it's a lot easier to plan what we need to do to get there. Now, there's a lot of opportunities here for any business, but particularly at the moment, there are still opportunities around, and we're seeing some of our clients particularly have taken the opportunity to do things a little bit differently, but that's actually created opportunities for them. And opportunities are really important. We need to be in a position to actually create them, but also take advantage of them when they arise. And this is particularly important because if we look at businesses in general, and particularly small business, one of the trends that we see, and this is quite alarming really, and it highlights why so many businesses are struggling at the moment, is that only 39% of businesses consistently make a profit. So if we look at let's say a 5-year trend of most businesses, only 39% make a profit year after year. And that's not a good thing. So it means if you're not making a profit, you're making a loss. You're spending more money than you're earning. And you can't continue to do that. So if a lot of businesses are not making profits consistently, then there are issues that we need to address. And part of why a lot of businesses don't make profits is that they have a strategy or no strategy at all, but those that do have strategies don't actually implement them. And we see this quite a lot, particularly at the beginning of a financial year or the beginning of a new calendar year, that everybody has the hope, the dreams, the new plans for what they're going to do in the new year, but they don't actually get implemented. And we'll talk about why that is so, and what we can do to change that and make sure we actually implement on our plans. So a lot of people don't actually make the steps. Once they decide they're going to do something, they don't actually make the steps. Now, another problem that we have is that we create a business and we want to be able to create value in that business and sell it at the end of the day. So at some point we're going to exit our business and we want to be able to sell that business for a profit and get some value out of it. So we need to also work on creating a business that doesn't depend on us and doesn't depend on us to deliver all the value and create all the actions in the business. So we need to look at putting in place systems, employing people to do the work, creating the revenue, but not having that dependent on us. And why we need to do that is that when we look at businesses when they come to sell in Australia, only 21% that list for sale with a broker actually get sold. So there's no guarantees that your business is going to sell at a future point. So we want to do what we can to maximize the ability of the business to sell, to make it a lot more attractive so that yours is one of those 21% that do get sold for a good price, for the value that you've created over the time you've been working as a business owner. And perhaps why we're seeing all these issues that, you know, only about a quarter of business owners believe they've got the financial literacy to run their business. And what I'm hearing a lot of is that even though business owners are working with accountants and bookkeepers, that they still don't understand what their figures mean. And now that's a problem on both sides. So business owners need to ask those questions and be more, willing to find out the answers or being more persistent in asking the questions about what does this actually mean. But accountants as well on the other side have an obligation, I believe, to explain and make sure the clients, that business owners actually understand what their financial figures mean and what the implications are. So we have a lot of things that we can address here, and it starts with the first steps. So when we talk about business plans, and business plans have got a really bad rap over the last, many years, because business plans used to be a very big document. that talked about a lot of things that people created, spent a lot of time on, and just put to one side and never did anything with. And that's why we focus more on what we call action plans rather than business plans. We do have a focus on action in our planning. So for those that have just joined, we are recording this webinar, and we will make it available later, and I'll also be sharing some resources at the end of the webinar. So thanks for joining us now, and we'll make those resources available to you as well. So there's a quote out here that says, "Goal without a plan is just a wish," and that's what we see quite a lot. So a lot of plans don't get implemented, a lot of actions don't actually happen. And the key is, how do we make these plans or decide what we need to do, and then make sure that we're doing the right things to get to the outcomes that we want. So the first step is we know what we want to achieve. We need to know that. So we need to know where we're moving from to where we're going to go to, and then our plan, our action plan is going to put in place, these are the steps we're going to take to get from where we are now to where we want to be, where our ideal business is going to be and what it's going to look like. And these are the steps we're going to take. So at the moment as well, so where your business is at now, you know what you've got. You've only got access to a certain amount of resources, a certain time, constraints, abilities, or even finances. So there's a limited amount that you can do. So part of the plan is identifying what we need to have in place, what resources, what finance we need, what other skills that we need to bring into the business to help us move from where we are today to where we want to be in the future. And that skills and set of resources, one of the traps for a lot of small and medium business owners is believing that they have to develop those skills themselves. So the easiest way is to use the skills that somebody else has already spent years of experience developing. And that doesn't mean you need to go and employ them. Because engaging a full-time employee is a big step, particularly for startup businesses and smaller businesses. It is a big step. And if you're not going to be using that employee full-time, then that's a big cost. So at the moment, what I would suggest is, instead of engaging an employee and then training them to do that, is use somebody that already has those skills, pay them to do a set project and implement that. Or look for systems that actually have a lot of that templated information, a lot of those templated resources and steps where you can implement them and follow the bouncing ball. But the first step is we need to identify what we're trying to achieve before we actually go and do the action. So identify the outcomes that we want and then work out what are the steps we need to put in place. So if we want to increase our sales, increase the number of customers, the first step is we've got to work out, well, what are we going to sell to these people and who are the people that buy our products? The first step isn't to go and do advertising. The first step isn't to go and update our website or to go and network at events. First step is actually to work out what you're going to sell and who you're going to sell it to, and then then to design your plan about how you're going to get your product, your services in front of those people, and then how are you going to show them that you've got a product and service that you can sell to them. So the first step is identifying them. Then once you've identified who they are and where they are, then you can set in place your plan to reach out to them. And that's where your marketing strategy comes in. That's where your advertising comes in, and your networking and that. But you need to be working in the right places. So work out who you're going to be selling to first and what you're going to sell to them, and then identify how you're going to do it. And then also in that is there are going to be different steps. So the first step might be that you might need to get a new website. Well, that might be a step. So who are you going to get to do that website for you? What's the scope of that project? Is it just going to be one page or a number of landing pages, or is it going to be a lengthy website with lots of different capabilities? Is it going to be an e-commerce store? What are the capabilities? So spend some time planning it before you go. and engage somebody to do it. There are a lot of resources out there to get information and to do your research, but don't try and learn all of these new skills yourself. Engage people that have already spent the time and experience. And before you engage somebody, find out about them. Find out who they've worked for, what they've done, have a look at the results, find out about the testimonials, but not just read the testimonials, go and actually have a look at their websites and see if you're happy with that kind of fit. So there is a lot of information out there. There is a lot that we can do, but we do need to do some work. So when we engage somebody to do it, it's not a case of offloading the whole bundle to them. We need to actually still be in control of the process. We still need to be in control of what the objective is and what the actions are going to be and how are we going to measure that that's effective. So we've got the steps in place. So I'm going to send out to everybody a link to a tool that we use, which will help you put this in place. And here are some snapshots from it. But what we're looking at is setting some high-level goals as a first point. So looking at where we're at now and setting in place some goals. And the temptation here is just to put some very vague goals, but let's be specific with that and put a particular amount down for how much profit you want to make. Because once we've got a specific goal, it's a lot easier to move towards that. If we've got a very general goal, we never know when we've reached it. So let's be very specific. And we also want to look at how many hours are you working in your business at the moment compared to what you want to be working. What's your stress like at the moment compared to what you want it to be? And then what we can start to do is get a picture of how your business is now and some of the things that need to be done to move it forward. And we're going to be looking at, as part of your plan, you need to be looking at strategy, but also, people, systems, and finances. And different aspects of those. And at different times, each one of those is going to be a priority. So we're not going to focus on all of those, but we need to work out what are the key areas that we need to work on first. So this is where you need to have a look at your numbers, your financial figures, your sales figures, where you're getting your sales leads from, how effective you are at converting them into sales, all of those sorts of things. Have a look at it. Before we move on. So we need to have a good understanding of where we're at. And probably two key things that we do need to know very, very closely and understand are profit and cash flow. Now, these two things are different and they often get confused. So we're just going to be very clear about what is profit and what is cash flow. Both are vital. So profit is what's left over from your revenue, from your sales, when you take off all of your expenses. And revenue is made up of all the number of customers you've got, the number of times they buy from you, and how much they buy from you each sale. So that's three things in there that make up your revenue. And if we increase any one of those, then the revenue is going to go up. So that's a good thing. So that's part of what we could look at. So profit is what's left over after you take off your expenses from your revenue. So expenses are not buying assets, although I know at the moment we have these instant asset write-offs as incentives for small business. So effectively they are an expense. But if we look at buying equipment as an asset of the business, is not generally an expense. So there are different things there like depreciation, but in very general terms, an expense is a cost of running the business. And revenue is the money you get from sales. That's different to cash flow as well. Now, some businesses sell on terms of trade, so they might not get paid for, say, 14 or 30 days. Likewise, your purchases, you might buy on an account and not have to pay for straight away. You might get them paid for maybe on 14 days or 30 days, or actually in some worse situations, particularly if you're importing, you may have to pay for the product before it's manufactured overseas. So it could be that you might be paying for stock a month or 2 months before you actually receive it. And that's not a good thing for cash flow. So cash is what's available, and that's a physical receipt. So you might make a sale but not get paid for 2 weeks. So when you make the sale, that's revenue, but when you get paid, that's cash coming in. And they don't always match up. Now, if you've got an e-commerce store and you're getting paid by your customers as you make the sale, that's a great thing. If you get paid the same time you make a sale, or even get paid in advance for doing your work, then that's great, because that improves your cash flow. But we do need to monitor what's going out as well. So those two things are very important. And when we have a closer look, we can work out what some of the areas that we need to address. So what are the pain areas that we need to look at? So cash is one of the biggest issues for all businesses. Managing cash flow on a regular basis. What cash are we spending that we don't need to? What expenses are we incurring that we don't need to? So having a closer look means that we can go through that. And one way is to go through your bank statement for the last couple of months and look at all those regular amounts that we're paying out of our bank account. And work out what are those subscriptions that you're paying for, and are you actually using them? That's a very quick way to work out how we can save some of those small amounts that all add up, and all of a sudden we're short on cash. So have a critical look at where all those regular amounts are going, so we can do that. Other things that affect your cash, and we see this a lot, and it's very tempting at the moment, is that people sell a product or service at too low a price. So you're not making profit on it, but you're also not covering your expenses. So it might cost you $100 to make a sale, but if you only sell it at a profit of $50, then you're making a loss. So pricing our products is important. And when we get tempted to discount, that's where the issues start to magnify. So we might discount to try and sell more product, but we make less profit, and the cash coming in is less. And sometimes we can actually, by not discounting and selling less, make more money. And there are different ways we can look at that. Having too many customers who become delinquent or end up bankrupt, and with some changes to the insolvency rules they're coming into play in Australia, this is going to become more and more of an issue. So we do need to have a spread of customers and not be reliant on one or two major customers. So we do need a spread of customers. Higher interest costs, short-term and additional borrowing. And this is a classic example for small businesses that start up by paying a lot of stuff on, say, credit cards, and end up paying higher interest, say 20% interest compared to 3 to 6% for normal borrowings. So making sure that we're not paying more interest than we need to. Another area which is a key is underlying problems with the business. So employing employees, paying them for full-time wages, but not getting the value out of them. So employing people who don't produce income or don't support the production of income can really erode your cash and your profit. So you need to work out, what do you need people to do? So before employing somebody, work out what are all the things that they're going to contribute to the business. And perhaps instead of employing, then you may just outsource that one task or function to another business and save, because that way you're only paying for that function, that task to be done. You're not paying for the downtime as well. I know there are some incentives around for engaging new employees, but there are conditions attached to those, and they may not actually be beneficial to you in the long run, because to get those incentives for employing, you may actually end up employing the wrong kind of person for your business. So we just need to be wary of those things. Not everything that looks great that comes from the government actually is when we look at the detail. So we're looking for growth that is profitable, so selling our products at a profit. So making sure we have priced our products, our services, particularly in the service industry. Big problem for service industry, so and professionals, is that we'll set a price, but we'll actually deliver a lot more value or spend a lot more time, that the value, the profit is eroded. And picking on the accounting industry, we are, as an industry, quite terrible, is that we we do a lot of extra things for the fee. We provide a lot of extra value. We call this scope creep, where you start doing more and more things that you didn't actually agree to do, but you don't change the pricing. So that's something particular that service industry and professionals need to be very wary of, is that scope creep. So making sure that you're selling at a profit, making sure that you're using your resources effectively, particularly your cash, doing things efficiently. So, instead of taking 14 days to get back to a customer on the first day and sales inquiry, and bring that sales revenue forward. Look at how effectively, if you say you're doing service work, how quickly you service the parts so that you can get paid quicker. So we look at turnaround, how quickly we can turn around work in our business, particularly when you're manufacturing or doing service type work engagement, so web design, graphic design, those sorts of things. How quickly can we turn those around? And then the last one I want to talk about, which is really important with growth, is that a lot of businesses chase growth and they go at it really hard, but they grow at too fast a rate. They don't have the cash available to do it. And an example of that is where you start to chase bigger and bigger customers. And big business in Australia particularly, and used to be government, but the government's improved, have a terrible reputation of really stringing out payment to small business. So as a business owner, your terms might be getting paid within 7 days or 14 days, but the larger companies will say 60 days is all we're going to pay you on. We're not paying you earlier than 60 days. But to grow those big accounts, you accept that. And that puts a strain on your cash. And when we start having a strain on our cash flow, that creates more and more problems with paying too much interest or running out of cash, not being able to get supply because we're not paying on time. So that does create problems there, and we do need to be mindful of it, that if we are going to grow, we need to make sure that we have the cash reserves or the financing to enable us to do that safely. So yeah, I'll repeat that. It's really important that the growth that you have is sustainable and not just rapid growth. A lot of businesses have come unstuck because of that rapid growth. Really important as part of any model is that you've got systems in place to make sure that you get paid quickly. You make it easier for your customers to pay you and tell them what your terms are. Back in the GFC, back in 2008, I started working with a business and they weren't getting paid by their customers. I think the average was about 46 days. No, it's actually 64 days, 64 days. And one of the problems was their accounting system at the time, when it produced invoices, had a term on there that said due net 14 days. Now, that's really confusing because it didn't actually say when it was 14 days from, was it 14 days from the date they delivered the service, or 14 days from the due date, or 14 days from end of month. It was quite confusing. So one simple change we did was we actually put a specific due date on their invoices. And what that meant was they started getting paid 3 weeks earlier on average. And getting paid 3 weeks earlier makes a huge difference to a business. It meant the cash was coming in, meant that they could do more with their business. They were able to pay their suppliers quickly, or they were able to buy in bigger quantities, so they got bulk discounts. So it really improved their cash flow. And all it was just adding one simple thing to their invoices to tell customers to pay them by a particular date. Now, with online invoicing, which we're seeing a lot of, what you can do is set up online payment systems where your customer only has to click the link in your invoice and it goes straight to your payment system, making it easy for your customer to pay you. So the easier it is for your customer to pay you, the quicker you get paid. And the other thing there is, don't forget to invoice. Because if you don't send the invoice out, the customer's not going to pay you. And I see that a lot, is that a lot of business owners, they'll do the work, they'll do a really good job, they'll do it really quickly, but they don't spend time doing invoicing. They might invoice once a month. And that's not a good policy, because the longer you leave it to invoice after you've done the work, the customer forgets how good a job you've done. They also take longer to pay because they don't think there's the urgency for it. So, if you take 4 weeks to send an invoice after you've done the work, it's likely that the customer will take another 4 weeks to pay you. So that's 8 weeks before you get paid, and that's not good for any business. Always suggest that as a business owner, you have a plan for paying yourself a regular wage. Get into the habit of making the business pay you on a regular basis. And that could be a small amount or a large amount, but whatever's viable for your business. But get into the habit of paying yourself a wage. A lot of business owners bootstrap and keep pushing everything back into the business, but don't take stuff out. It causes financial pressure. It causes a lot of other pressures, particularly in family relationships. So it's important to get into the habit of paying yourself a regular wage and making sure your business continues to provide cash flow so that you can do that. The next stage is making sure you pay your taxes, because that's where a lot of business owners get caught up. They don't pay taxes regularly. They don't pay the GST. They don't pay withholding tax. They don't pay income tax on a regular basis. And that mounts up into a big amount. And that causes ongoing issues, because the ATO can now report that on your credit reporting, which affects your ability to borrow. And when financiers are looking at your situation to assess whether they're going to lend to you, they are looking at whether you're paying your taxes regularly, what you're owing. Do you have a history of paying tax on time, or do you not pay it and end up having payment arrangements? So if you're not managing your taxes, it's going to affect your ability to borrow and fund the growth of your business in the future. So just very quickly looking at 4 ways to grow. This is something that we do as a full workshop session as well. So I'm just going to very quickly go through this, but the key points anyone can take away. So there's 4 ways to grow profitably, and we've sort of touched on this already. The first one is increasing the number of customers. If we come back to what was revenue made up of, revenue was made up of the number of customers, the number of times that they buy from you, and the average value of the transaction. So McDonald's is the classic example of increasing the average value of each sales transaction, where they asked you, do you want fries with that? What else can I sell you with your burger? That's a classic example. Now, increasing the number of customers comes from our marketing activities and our sales strategies. The frequency that customers come from you or buy from you, things like your being in touch with previous customers, your CRM system, customer relationships management systems, where you're communicating with previous customers what you're currently selling. It's cheaper to acquire more business from an existing customer or somebody that's dealt with you before than to acquire a new customer. So the more frequently we can get our existing customer base to buy from us, that's really important. One of the jobs I've done previously was with they did install cool rooms and refrigerants for commercial premises like cafes and clubs and stuff. And they also did residential, but they had a history of all the customers that they'd done installation work for, which was great. The other part of their business, though, was repairing and doing the maintenance work on a regular basis. So in 10 years, they had a big customer base of potential maintenance customers. The problem was they had at no point ever contacted any of those customers to offer their maintenance services. They relied on people ringing them when things broke down. Contrast that with another business I work with, where at the end of each installation job they do, they have a service agreement, a maintenance agreement ready, and as part of the handover, they get the customer to sign up for a maintenance agreement. So that maintenance agreement is a highly profitable piece of work. So it does a couple of things. It gets more work from an existing customer. It's a regular stream of income, and it's profitable income, and it's locked in. So the value of that customer, if they're getting a maintenance work done once a year, they're often with the business for another 5 to 10 years. So the value is more than just that first stage. So looking at different ways that we can increase the frequency customers buy from us, being in contact with them, using those marketing techniques, the CRM, emails, newsletters, Facebook ads, it all works together, but increase the frequency that they buy from you. Looking at increasing the average value of each sales transaction. If you go to a lot of online web stores at the moment, you often see when you've looked at something, it will down the bottom, it'll be other people who looked at this also bought this item. So it's a way of trying to get you to buy that extra piece of merchandise. So increasing the average sale transaction. And as you increase the size of each transaction, you reduce the cost as a proportion of the revenue. So we do want to increase the value of each transaction. And we want to be more efficient at doing it. So the quicker we can do the work, particularly in a service industry, the quicker we can turn around jobs, the quicker we are able to invoice, the quicker we get paid, and the more profitable it is because we've spent less time doing it. So they're the 4 key ways to grow a business profitably. They're the 4 things that we really need to focus on. If we do nothing else, those 4 things. Momentum is really important, and we talked earlier about why a lot of plans, the New Year's resolutions, business plans don't happen. And the biggest issue is that there's no immediate success. There's no quick wins. There's nothing short term. There's no short-term results to actually build momentum. So one of the things we look at is when we're looking at moving your business forward, what are some of the immediate things that we can fix? And these don't have to be really big items. Mentioned that simple thing of putting a due date of when you want to be paid on your invoice, then the difference that made to that client. Improving the speed at which their customers paid. That could be a simple thing. The second thing could be a quick win of sending out a communication to everybody that's bought from you in the past, telling them about a new service. And that might deliver some work for you, and that could be a quick win. So there's a few things that can build some immediate momentum and get moving in that plan. Because the more success we have, the easier it is to keep going. It's like a lot of things. As you feel yourself getting fitter, it's easier to keep exercising because the feedback is there. You can see the success, you can see the benefit, and you're more likely to continue. So celebrate those successes as well. So set a goal of what they're going to be and how you can move forward. So focusing then as well on the longer game on what's important. So coming back to what your ideal business looks like and why that's important to you is helpful, because we need to be focused on the end result and how each step is actually going to help us to get to that point. So keep focused on what those things that are important to you are, and actually regularly feedback how you're going. Get feedback on how you're going in your plan. Is it working? Is it delivering the results that you wanted? Are the results, are they the right financial amount, or are they providing the right increase in efficiency, or what needs to be changed in that process to improve it even more? So get some regular feedback. And we look at often like 90 days is a good time period. If we look too far in the future, then what tends to happen is that nothing happens until we get closer to the due date. That's if we remember. So regular feedback, so 90-day time frames, so 3 months, but only focusing on a couple of things. Because the more we try and spread our focus, the less likely we are to do things. So limit what we're focused on. Focus on the key things that are really important right now that are going to provide the most benefit. So keep focused. There's so many things out there that we could be doing. And it's easy to get overwhelmed by how much we can do or do need to do. So we concentrate on just a few things. So I say that 3 things is more than enough to focus on at any one point in time. And when we say 3 things, it's very easy to come up with 3 things. And don't just pick the first 3 things that you think of. Because when we do a full strategy session with clients, we often come up with 60 to 100 items that need to be done. And they may all be good things to do, but they may not deliver the most results, or they may not produce the most effective outcomes up front. They might be important later on, but we need to do other things first. We need to get that quick momentum and build. So we might have our list of 100 things, but we'll choose 3 critical things that we're going to focus on for the next 90 days and just work on those 3 things. And once they are done and signed off, then move on to the next things on your list, if they are still the priority, because other things may come up in that time, and that's why it's important to review. So planning is important. We've talked about the 4 things, and this is a bit of overlap, but the other things that are really important is we talked about having the right type of customer. So who do you want to buy from you? There's no point trying to spend a lot of marketing dollars on attracting customers that are not the right fit for your business. So work out who your right customers are. And if we can develop a recurring revenue stream from customers, then that's even better, because once we've got that sticky customer, then it's a lot easier to get that ongoing revenue from them. A classic example is your coffee makers, your Nespressos, where you buy the machine, but to keep using the machine, you go and buy the pods. So you've got that recurring revenue built in. Software subscriptions are another classic model of that recurring revenue. So how can we turn our existing business into a model that helps generate recurring revenue from customers, or customers keeping coming back to buy from you? Make sure we price for profit, be efficient, and make time to work on your business. So we spend a lot of time doing things in our business. We need to actually take time out from it. So that might mean setting aside a couple of hours a week to remove yourself from the business, go to a particular spot where you just think about what can you do to improve your business. And that might be a cafe or a park or anywhere, but just set aside some time and a place to go and not do your business, but think about what you can do to work on it, improve it. And then we need to work out what resources we need. And if we're going to have to spend money to get them, how are we going to fund that growth? So planning takes time, particularly if we're looking to apply for finance. It's not a case of you turn up, here's my idea, I want finance, and I get it the next day. It doesn't happen that way. So we need to make sure that we implement. Because there's no point planning if we don't implement. If we fail to have a plan in the first place, then that's a problem. If we have a plan and we don't do it, that's just as much a problem, because we spent that time planning. We could have done other things. So you need more than just a plan. It's important to have the actions in place to make sure they happen. And we need to be very clear about what we want to achieve, where we want to be, where we are now, and what we're going to do. So I'm repeating this, but it's really important to make sure that we have that plan in place. So what are the 3 things you're going to focus on right now? And for each of those 3 things, you need to write down who's going to do what, when it needs to be done by, what resources you need, and then importantly, how you're going to measure how effective it was, who's going to be accountable for it, and how will I know I've been successful? So for each of those 3 points, those 3 things you're going to work on, we need to set out who's going to be responsible, when they're going to do it, what they need to do it, and how we're going to know it worked. So measure the activity. Talking about fun, introducing some fun into the exercise. So by making it more fun, you're likely to improve the likelihood that you'll achieve it. So some people don't like doing their accounts reconciliations and bank reconciliations, but I know in a lot of people I've spoken to like the bank reconciliation in Xero because it's like playing a game. Once everything's reconciled, it disappears and they're done. So they get a reward. But make it visual. If you're a visual person, then make charts of what's going on. Use your sticky notes, whatever it takes to make sure that you are focused, but also concentrated on what you're doing, and make it a fun engagement. If it's a hard task, you're not going to do it. So add some a degree of fun into the exercise, and it's more likely to happen. So just repeating some key actions, work out what they are, and then we're going to focus on what are the quick wins. So part of the plan of what we're going to send you that you can work on is a way of just documenting what you're going to do in the next 90 days. So coming back to those things, what are your 3 things? Who's going to do it? What do they need to do it? When's it going to be done by? And all of those actions will come back to your objectives, which comes back to why you started your business and what you really want to get out of it. And that's the important thing. So if we focus on those things and put in place those actions, but we do that having had a close look at our finances, our other business figures, then we will know that we're on the right path. Now, accountability is helpful here. So tell somebody about what you're doing. And that can be with employees, can be with your accountant, can be with your advisor, can be with family, but the more accountable you are, the more likely you are to achieve it. And there's a chart here that shows what tends to happen is that when you work with somebody initially and they give you one-off advice, immediately it's effective, but over time, the effectiveness disappears. So what we don't want is that to happen. We want to put in place a strategy and a plan and make sure that it's effective, ongoing, that you build on those actions and build on those success. And that's where working with somebody regularly, and part of what we do with our clients is we have these monthly review meetings where we're looking at the progress of the plan. And the more engaged we are with our clients, helping them review their action plan and the steps they've taken, the more likelihood they are to succeed. And when those meetings stop, we see a correlation with the reduction in effectiveness. So that is one way that we work with clients. So thank you for joining us today. Use the resources that we send through. Book a time to chat to us about how we can help you, or what you can do as the next steps. And then, hopefully that will help you to create a business that can actually survive through situations like we're encountering today, but also be prepared for when the next thing happens to your business, so that you can just move through it, but not just move through it, but you can survive, thrive, and grow a profitable business that helps you achieve the things that you really wanted when you started your business. So thank you for joining us today. It's been great to have you, and I look forward to your feedback.